Call to order the 884th meeting of the Board of Directors of MSAD 27. Roll call.
Keith Jandro.
Here.
Kurt Susi.
Here.
Jacob Terrio. Toby Jandro.
Here.
Barry Willett. Here. Gary Sibley.
Here.
Sarah Ashley.
Here.
Adjustments to the agenda.
Because this is a special board meeting, we would need unanimous consent to adjust the agenda. And I sent an email this morning to you that Joe Kelly has made a recommendation to hire 2 educational technician one-on-ones. As chance would have it, only one of them responded to her today. So if it would be okay with you, I would like to adjust the agenda to add a new hire of 1 educational one-on-one at FPES.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous.
Jake, sir. So on adjustments to agenda, with that in mind, Gary, I heard from Dan. He sent a draft. He's going to be available to talk to us about it. So I'd like to move to amend the agenda to add a brief executive session to discuss the letter with the lawyer at the end of the meeting. That's my motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Public participation. Superintendent's report.
Just give you a quick update of approved CRF funds use. I had a facilities tour with Sarah and Keith last Friday, and as we were going through the facilities, started to dawn on me that some of the updates that we may need to do here do have a direct impact because of COVID-19. So one of the things we talked about was the intercom system. If we do not have an intercom system that functions appropriately, connects to all the classrooms all the time, if we need to send out some important information to staff and students directly related to the school closure or remote learning or whatever, we just would not have that ability with our current system. So that's one of the things that we flagged as we were walking and talking. Another area of the school, this school, that we examined was the locker rooms. And for those of you that attended Fort Kent Community High School, the locker rooms that you remember are still the locker rooms today. And those definitely do not provide social distancing measures, especially in the boys' shower room and such. So that's another thing that we flagged as not being appropriate for social distancing. And then a third item that we talked about was the windows at Fort Kent Elementary School, not being able to fully open all of them to provide the appropriate ventilation for classrooms. And so I sent an email to Stan Sawyer, who's managing the CRF funds, asked about these 3 things, and he said absolutely these would be valid uses of CRF funds. Regarding the windows, we know that we can't do the entire school at Fort Kent Elementary. There's not enough CRF funds, first of all, and there's not enough time. So we're targeting A-Wing. And so right now, Peter and Rudy are scrambling to get a quote for A-Wing windows. Rudy is finalizing a quote right now for the locker room upgrades, and Third Eye Global is finalizing a quote for the intercom system, both for here and Fort Kent Elementary School. So those will be put in our application, and they'll come off of our list of to-do things that we need to do for our facilities.
Ben, can I just add on, during the facilities tour, we had talked about there's windows in each of the wings that need work, and by replacing the A-wing ones, there'd be enough parts to be able to repair some of the non-working ones in the other wings, so that they could actually have a bigger, wider impact.
So we're not compromising the other 2 wings because we're just doing one at this point.
Right, they're actually
So
getting
there's still
some
the
benefits.
ventilation that they need
Yeah.
indoors.
They would get improved windows where they're the ones that are struggling.
A-wing is the furthest wing from the biomass system, and it's the wing that is the coldest in the winter, so I think that's gonna help as well for that purpose. So, good news with regards to CRF fund uses. Just as I seem to do some good thinking, and sometimes it's terrible thinking, but I think it's good thinking while I'm mowing the lawn. So this weekend I was mowing the lawn and thought about athletics a little bit in this decision that the MPA has to make with regards to athletics. And I thought it would probably be best if we are proactive in what the MPA is about to decide and have a plan B ready in the event that the MPA does not want us to sponsor interscholastic activities, especially team sports like soccer and other team sports because of social distancing measures. So I pitched this idea to my superintendent colleagues in Aroostook County and said, hey, what if we have just an Aroostook County League? It's not MPA sanctioned, it's just us, Aroostook County exchanging competition between each other, and we have golf and tennis and anything that we can provide social distancing, cross-country running where it's not a mass start, it's time starts, even competitive cornhole, I throw that out, and that seemed to be the crowd favorite when we spoke today. And even examining esports. Esports is getting really big, and some of our kids rush home to go behind the computer and do stuff. If we can sponsor it competitively, maybe that would be a way to get kids to do something. So pitch this to the Aroostook County Superintendents this Sunday. Yet today we met as a group on our regular Zoom meeting, and there seemed to be a lot of superintendents in favor of doing something for our athletes. I think the overall theme is if the MPA says move forward as a county with team sports, we'll work within that framework and we'll provide that. But if the MPA says we advise not to have team sports, we think we can deliver on social distancing sports that still allow for some competition, and I think our kids deserve to have some kind of level of competition. I want soccer. I hope we have soccer, but I think we just need a plan B. So I'm not asking for approval from you right now. I'm just saying we have a plan B that we'll take to you in the event that the MPA decides yay or nay. So that's just food for thought for all of you. And if you have other suggestions, we even moved into the winter because we kind of think that if they cancel the fall soccer, they're probably going to cancel basketball. That's an indoor sport, but skiing is social distance, and badminton. Who doesn't love a badminton tournament? So just all food for
You never really got that far, don't you?
That's it.
Items of new business.
We do have a recommendation for the central office receptionist, accounts payable. This was Ashley's position. There were several candidates that applied, but when Lucy and Jill Kelly went through the pool of applicants, there was actually one that had all of the requirements we were asking for in the ad. Experience with accounts payable, an accounting background, the degree, the bachelor degree in business management. So Lucy and Jill did interview last week and did some reference checks after the interview, and all were glowing. So it's without hesitation that Lucy and Jill recommend Gina Daigle for this position. Gina's currently the accounts payable and staff accountant at Northern Maine Medical Center. So that's our recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous.
And because of, I noticed I had a mistake. We actually do not have a cook's helper opening anymore. We transferred Lisa. What's Lisa's last name?
Terrio.
Lisa Terrio was a sub. She transferred into that position, so that's no longer an opening. And then the ed techs, I'm going to ask you to fill one right now. And then there's one that's also interviewed and is being recommended, but we haven't done enough of the reference checks first. So right now, Jill is recommending one of those. It is Jessica Wishart, who manages a daycare in Wallagrass. and that's the recommendation for one of those positions.
So move.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Jason Harris.
He said he quit it a while ago, but he got off, he got back on, now he says he's all set. So I think we're good. The last thing I have for you is in regards to remote learning instructors. I had been working with Mr. Neto specifically for Fort Kent Elementary School on how we are going to manage our remote learning needs for his school. In looking at the teachers that were willing to volunteer and the number of students that were left in the classroom, there really wasn't an easy way for Mr. Neto to free up a teacher or teachers to be able to manage the remote learners and also manage the classrooms. It just happens to be that there's such a even spread across the grade levels for the most part that it didn't work out. And I was noticing the same thing was occurring in our neighboring school with Dr. Levac in Madawaska. So we sat down the three principals together and kind of looked at numbers from a Valley Unified perspective. And we made some recommendations. Sharon also joined us in that meeting. And when it came down to it, we made a determination that it would be best if pre-K, we asked the current pre-K teachers to just keep the materials that they're doing in class, set them aside, and then we'll send those packets home to parents every Friday. So the students go through a week worth of instruction. Friday, we take those packets, send them home with some general instructions of what the class did, so the parents can guide that. When we did our surveys this spring, parents really asked for that work in advance, packets of work that they could just engage with their students. So the pre-K wouldn't need an active remote teacher because they would just receive the information from from the school. Pre-K is also not a required grade level, so we were cognizant of that as well. But we want to support those parents who want their kids in pre-K remotely and provide that as best we can. Then we looked at K, 1, and 2. Those grade levels are considered our early elementary grade levels, and saw the spread on that. For Fort Kent Elementary, there was 10 learners that fit that category. And when we combine that with Madawaska and Dr. Levac, it came out to a cohort of 22. I think right now it's 21 or 22 because some have been duplicated. And one teacher in specific, Can Neto, has volunteered to manage that. And Robbie and I met with Can to kind of go over whether or not she was sure that's something she wanted to take on, and she's extremely excited. Can knows the grade levels because she works with a variety of grade levels in her role as reading specialist. So we are kind of excited that she was willing to take that on. The problem became with 3, 4, 5, and 6, where it was too much of a large cohort to try to make one group. We had been having discussions with the teachers union about grade 6 possibly following the same guidance as the other middle school, 7th and 8th grade, where they're essentially following their class schedule. And we actually had some parents that had requested that would be so much easier from their 6th grade learner to follow a class schedule. So I know Robbie's been speaking with his teachers about creating, similar to what they have here at the middle high school, a block-like schedule, so it's not 7 classes a day, it's 3 or 4 classes for 6th graders, where the students could tune into their class or access the video. We'd ask our 6th grade teachers to record their lessons, like the 7th through 12th grade teachers, access their video on Google Classroom so that they can essentially follow what the class is doing. We think 6th grade is able to handle that. So that would leave a cohort for grades 3, 4, 5, and 6. Here for FPS, it would be 16, but through the Valley Unified, it would actually be 23 or 24. And we thought that hiring a teacher specific to this cohort, who would be our remote learning teacher for the year for the 3 schools, in the event that the numbers get so small that we have to put data back for a regular role, this teacher could continue the remote learning. It would be just a 1-year position. because we don't know what's going to happen beyond this school year. If all the kids go remote, this teacher would keep her cohort, so these kids would stay with this teacher for the year, that would be their teacher. It would help provide that level of security that we always have, that remote teacher. In looking at how to make that determination for funding, I did share with you in my notes, thought that simply a percentage, a cost share percentage might be the best way to do it, simply because those numbers will change. And when we reevaluate in November at the end of the first quarter, that cost share may change, and we may have to reapportion what that looks like based on that change. So it's a moving target, but we thought that would probably be the best way to approach it. So what we're asking from all of you, because CAN is our employee, we would essentially be approving a contracted service to the other two districts for CAN services. And then for the other employee, because we're the fiscal agent for Valley Unified, this person would be hired as an SAD 27 employee under Valley Unified, because we're the fiscal agent. And again, we would contract this service out to the other two districts as well. For us specifically, SAD 27, Sharon has carry forward monies from a class size reduction in Title IIA that is more than enough to fund our share of the additional teacher. KN is already budgeted for us, so we're only going to get revenue from her, cost sharing out to the other two districts. But for the other teacher, we have some carry forward funds from Title II. We also have CRF funds because this is directly a CRF position. So if we want to use that first before the title monies, we could do that as well. So there is no local impact for us from a budget standpoint. It would fall under either the title monies or the CRF funds. Here's where your questions come in.
This,
You go motion first, discuss.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
these numbers that you have, do those include the RISE students?
So right this week, what Mr. Neto was doing was double checking with every teacher if they wanted to keep their remote learners.
Okay.
I believe RISE has already, so that's going to be less the RISE learners. RISE were included in this original number, and I think there's two.
That's right.
Thank you, Mr. Neto.
So what, I understand if we have like a full-blown issue here where everybody goes remote, that we're gonna go to remote learning across the board and these students are gonna stay with these teachers, but I think it's probably more likely that we're gonna have students who are out for 6 or 7 days at a time while they're getting tested because they had a fever.
Yep.
I'm assuming those students are gonna go into here.
Those students that have those temporary remote learning, it's going to be managed by the regular classroom teacher.
So we're not cutting into our reserve. Okay.
You know, one thing, we're going to have to follow the elementary benchmarks for class sizes, and 24 is the max for elementary. I can't put 27 kids, and it's not fair to these teachers. A temporary remote learning, our teachers are all trained on it. They can give some information out to that kid who has to be home for a self-quarantine for 14 days.
And then if the student comes, after the first quarter decides to come back, they would get placed into one of the in-person
In classroom, yep. There might be some flex both ways, some going out for remote, some
Right.
coming in. Yep.
The other question I have is, why are we doing this two different ways for Cayenne and for tacitly Julie?
Because KN is currently an employee,
Okay.
and the other one would be a new hire, which technically would be a new hire for Valley Unified, but it's our hire, because you are the fiscal agent.
Well, why can't SAD 27 just hire her?
They can. This, you are.
Well, but no, it does make a difference because ultimately, I mean, things aren't good with Valley Unified. Throwing another employee into the mix, we might as well just hire an employee for Frenchville, Madawaska, because that's how these meetings go. If SAD 27 wants to hire somebody and we contract out like we do with KN, I got no issue with it.
and that's why this board is the only one this is being pitched to in this, because you hold the approval for fiscal agency for value. So we can change that language to an SAD 27 employee that we contract out to the other two schools. She will have an SAD 27 contract and be in the teacher's union for SAD 27. She'll work out of Mr. Netto's building, she'll help with duties, it'll be an SAD 27 teacher.
I'm much more comfortable with that.
Ben, who would be taking over Ms. Neto's responsibilities, her current responsibilities?
Mr. Netto, did you want to answer that question?
Yeah, so, when all this came about, we talked to Ms. Houston, who does a lot of the Title I program at KPS. One of the things that you guys helped us out with earlier this year was approving a U and tech. So one of the things we're going to be doing, and this is where everybody has to carry a little bit more weight than you do this, right? Where the Title I is going to be focusing a lot on our younger grade levels. This is going to be K-2, and then in that 2 and 3 range in D1, that's where Lisa's going to be able to help us with some support. So it's a little bit of moving people around to be able to get everything covered.
Great.
I know when you talked about how this is gonna be paid for, are you thinking annually, quarterly? I mean, how are we gonna do it?
Quarterly invoicing to the other two districts, because the numbers will change, the percentages will change.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Do you want to schedule another meeting on the fly as we need it? Or do you want to schedule something in stone and hold to it? I don't know if there's going to be anything in the works or not.
You still got,
Next big thing will be the sports.
Yeah.
NBA. Yep. So we can wait till that comes out and I ask you for a meeting at that time.
We know that's coming on the 27th, right?
Deferred it for 2 weeks.
what?
Yeah. Last week was supposed to be the announcement, and then they say, well, we're gonna come out this week. And today there was supposed to be a sports medicine committee that met, and there's nothing, I don't know. I don't.
I'd be more comfortable, given how MPA tends to act or not act, to just set a date certain for our next meeting, especially since things are constantly evolving.
Sure.
I mean, I'd hate for something awful to happen and us to have to convene a meeting on the fly as opposed to just having us here talk about it.
When's our next meeting scheduled for?
Our next regular
September.
meeting. The regular meeting is for the 21st of September.
I think we should have one sooner than that.
Yeah.
A week from now is September 1st.
I would offer that you wait at least a couple of weeks. I think maybe the 21st, if maybe a little too late, but a couple of weeks into the school year, it's going to, it's going to reveal a lot of different things relative to what's happening in our buildings, how the students are adjusting. This is a major change, I'm telling you. It's not, I've been in school now for 2 days. There are a lot of serious changes taking place, and kids are going to have to adapt. And so we're going to have to really keep an eye on that, because I think, these are certain numbers that we have right now, but they may possibly change.
So 2 weeks from now is like the 7th or 8th, right?
Tuesday, September 8th, Wednesday, September 9th.
8th works for me.
Works for me.
Does a 4 o'clock work, or would you do it first and later?
Works for Gary.
I prefer us not get into the habit of having early meetings, just because it does not give the public the opportunity, or a lot of the public the opportunity to attend, not like we have been at this point, but actually, you know what? Live streaming, I guess they could attend anyway, but
How many viewers do you have, Chaz?
Got 35.
Pretty good.
Wow.
It was a record number.
I have no preference.
Hey, you know, a note that should be noted is whenever I started on the board, every meeting was Friday night. Every meeting was Friday night. I'll say that again, every meeting was Friday night.
But when you started on the board, the drinking age was 18.
That's correct, Tony.
4 o'clock in the night.
4 o'clock in the night.
There's one item on the agenda that we
Yeah.
didn't get to.
Oh, did we?
Pre-K.
Oh, yes, we're not done. My apologies. As I mentioned in my notes to you, speaking with Mr. Neto, speaking with Mr. Sose, and Mr. Neto, you have to know, has been a big advocate of the half-day program. It worked out wonderfully last year. But we're looking at staggered lunches this year. How many staggered lunches?
We have 11 cohorts.
11 cohorts of lunches that are going to require cleanup between cohorts so that, you know, the kids have a safe sanitary place. If our bus drivers are all on the road picking up pre-K students, or a majority of them, it's not going to happen. So the ask here is to revert back to our original 2-day, full-day pre-K with the 5th day for intervention of those students that need it the most.
Make the motion, we can discuss.
So moved.
Sarah, any discussion?
This obviously is temporary.
It's not our preference.
Right.
But it's a need for this year. If COVID goes away before the turn of the next semester, then maybe we can readjust.
Seems like for cleaning too, the classrooms, that would be a lot easier.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
So Gary, we're doing a more formalistic approach to this, so I want to go back to the last vote we had. There was a motion and a second on the table. We had discussion that there was going to be changes. Do we need to put a new motion with the changes? Or are we all going to agree that the changes we agreed to are retroactively in the first motion?
And the changes you're asking about are SAD 27 employing the extra teacher?
Yes.
Yep, we'll reflect in notes,
And that it would be quarterly.
quarterly invoice.
Yeah.
Yep.
See that
The quarter.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so, yeah, the new teacher would not be for Valley Unified, the teacher would be for MSAD contracting out to.
I just wanted to make sure we didn't have to do a new vote for that. Well, no, I mean, it's we're following Robert's rules now.
All right, we have a motion for executive session.
So moved.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Unanimous.
Is Jake still out there?